There is a kind of pain that doesn't scream. It waits. It sits in the silence after a warm conversation suddenly goes cold. It lives in the gap between, "I miss you," and no reply. It stares back at you when someone looks deeply into your soul one night, then acts almost untouched by you the next morning. And if you've ever loved someone avoidant, you know this pain too well. It is not clean pain. It is confusing pain. The kind that makes you question your instincts, your memory, your worth. The kind that whispers, "Maybe I imagined all of it." But you didn't imagine it. What you felt was real. What you saw was real. The shift was real too. And that is exactly why it hurts. Because when an avoidant secretly desires you, it rarely looks like obvious affection. It doesn't come wrapped in certainty, consistency, or easy devotion. It comes in fragments, in mixed signals, in strange little moments of tenderness followed by retreat, in closeness that feels almost sacred, then distance that feels almost cruel. Not because they feel nothing, but because feeling too much is exactly what overwhelms them. That is the brutal truth. You keep thinking the answer is to love harder, explain better, prove your loyalty more clearly, become softer, safer, easier to hold. But with avoidant energy, the more desperately you reach, the more their system interprets the connection as pressure. Not always consciously. Not because they sit there plotting how to withhold love, but because closeness activates danger in a body that learned long ago that needing people comes with a cost. So when you chase what is pulling away, you do not create safety, you create heat. And heat makes avoidant people run. This is where most people get it wrong. They assume distance means indifference. They assume silence means absence of feeling. They assume if someone wanted them badly enough, they would simply act like it. But human beings are not that simple, especially not people whose nervous systems are wired to confuse intimacy with loss of control. Sometimes they do care. Sometimes they care so much that their amygdala reads love as a threat. Sometimes the body floods with cortisol right after a moment of emotional closeness. Sometimes dopamine pulls them toward you, and fear pulls them away from you. And they live in that agonizing split without ever admitting it out loud. They want the warmth, but they fear the fire. They crave the bond, but not the vulnerability that comes with it. So they develop a language of almost. Almost texting. Almost opening up. Almost staying. Almost choosing you in the daylight the way they chose you in private. And if you don't understand this, you will take their conflict and turn it against yourself. So let's go deeper. If an avoidant secretly desires you, one of the first signs is not constant pursuit. It's return. They leave, but they don't fully leave. They create distance, then circle back, as if pulled by something they can't explain. Maybe it's a random message. Maybe it's a casual check-in that sounds small but lands heavy because it comes after silence. Maybe they resurface with a joke, a memory, a question that didn't need asking. It can look unimpressive from the outside, but emotionally, it means something. Avoidants do not keep revisiting what feels emotionally neutral. If they keep reappearing, it's often because the bond stayed alive inside them longer than they wanted. Another sign is the way they remember you when they pretend not to. They may act detached, but then they bring up some tiny detail you mentioned once. Your strange coffee order. The song you played in the car 3 months ago. The story about your childhood that even attentive people might forget. This is not an accident. Desire leaves traces in the mind. Even when they act emotionally minimal, their attention gives them away. People do not hold on to details that mean nothing to them. The avoidant just won't package that memory in a sentimental confession. They'll hide it inside something casual, almost dismissive, as if they stumbled into caring by mistake. And then there is their watchfulness. This one is subtle. It is the way they keep tabs without fully stepping in. They watch your stories. They notice changes in your energy. They ask indirect questions through mutual friends. They act as though they are detached from your life, but somehow they are never completely unaware of it. This is what hidden desire often looks like in avoidant people. Presence without exposure. They want access to you without the emotional risk of standing in front of you with their heart visible. So they stay near the edges, looking, monitoring, feeling, pretending they aren't. Another sign is that they create excuses for contact that have nothing to do with what they actually feel. They won't say, "I wanted to hear your voice." They'll say, "I saw something that reminded me of you." They won't admit, "I've been thinking about you all week." They'll send a meme, a link, a practical question, some flimsy reason to reopen the door. It sounds small, but psychologically it matters. Avoidants often use low-stakes contact to regulate the risk of high-stakes emotion. They need a bridge that doesn't expose the depth underneath. So if they keep inventing little reasons to return, the reason is usually bigger than the message. Then comes one of the most misunderstood signs of all. They pull away after intimacy, not after disinterest, after intimacy, after a deep conversation, after a vulnerable night, after eye contact that lingered too long, after they let you in more than usual. This is where so many people get shattered, because they assume closeness should create more closeness. But for the avoidant nervous system, closeness often creates emotional hangover. The moment itself feels good, even intoxicating. Dopamine rises, the body softens, their guard drops. But afterward, the deeper system panics. The mind starts scanning for danger. Am I losing control? Are they expecting more now? Did I reveal too much? What if I can't maintain this? What if I get trapped? And just like that, warmth turns into withdrawal. If someone consistently goes colder right after moments that were undeniably real, don't be too quick to call it fake. Sometimes it was real enough to scare them. Another sign is that they test your availability without offering their own. This one can mess with your head if you don't see it clearly. They might disappear, then reappear to see if you're still there. They may ask questions that quietly measure your emotional openness. They may drop just enough attention to feel your response, then retreat before giving you the same reassurance. Why? Because desire in avoidant people often hides behind control. They want to know they still matter to you. They want confirmation that the connection is alive. But offering equal vulnerability feels too exposed, so they test the bond without fully participating in it. It is not healthy, but it is revealing. People do not test what they do not value. And yes, another sign is jealousy, though they rarely call it that. Not dramatic possession, not open claims. Something quieter. A shift in tone when they sense someone else has your attention. A sudden curiosity about who you're with. A strange edge in their voice when you seem less available. They may even pull away more, as if punishing themselves for caring at all. This is important to understand. Avoidants often hate how much relational threat affects them. They want to seem above it, untouched, free. So when jealousy appears, it collides with their self-image. That tension makes them even more guarded. But the feeling is still there. Indifference does not react. Attachment does. There is also the sign people often miss because it doesn't sound romantic enough. They start weaving you into their private routines. Not big promises, not dramatic declarations. Just small integrations. A photo sent from their day. A habit of reaching for you at a certain hour. Mentioning what they cooked, where they went, What exhausted them? What made them laugh? These things seem ordinary, but intimacy often grows through ordinary repetition. When an avoidant starts allowing you into the rhythm of their inner world, even inconsistently, it means you are occupying more psychological space than they admit. They may never say, "You matter to me," but they start living as if your presence belongs somewhere in the architecture of their day. And finally, the deepest sign may be the one that once broke your heart the most. Their silence gets heavier when their feelings get stronger. Not lighter, heavier. Because when desire becomes undeniable, they can no longer pretend it is casual. And that is when the system tightens. That is when they disappear for longer. That is when they become strangely formal or distant or bi, right at the point where something real could have begun. This is the paradox of avoidant longing. The closer they feel to emotional truth, the more urgently they may try to escape it. Not because they don't want you, because wanting you threatens defenses that took them years to build. Now here is where the power starts to shift. Because once you understand this, you stop humiliating yourself in the dark, trying to decode every silence as proof that you are not enough. You stop begging for clarity from someone whose entire system is organized around avoiding the very clarity you want. And most importantly, you stop feeding the pattern that keeps you emotionally trapped. The core concept is this: silence is not weakness when it comes from self-respect. Silence, when used consciously, is not manipulation. It is non-reactivity. It is refusing to make someone's confusion your home. It is letting the dust settle so truth can reveal itself without you forcing it. It is the moment your nervous system stops dancing to their inconsistency and starts returning to itself. Because the avoidant often expects pursuit. Not always arrogantly, sometimes almost sadly. They expect that if they pull back, you will lean forward. If they go quiet, you will fill the silence. If they send something vague, you will overinvest and make the emotional labor easy for them. And when you do that, the dynamic stays exactly where it has always been. You performing your value, them consuming the reassurance without having to face themselves. But when you stop, when you do not chase every retreat, when you do not over-explain your heart, when you do not make their ambiguity feel safe for them at your expense, something changes. The emotional gravity shifts. Now they have room to feel the absence they used to regulate with your presence. Now the dopamine of your availability is interrupted. Now the nervous system that kept avoiding contact has to confront the possibility of losing it. And loss is clarifying. Loss strips fantasy away. Loss reveals value. This is when they start replaying your words in quiet rooms. This is when your calm becomes louder than your pleading ever was. This is when they notice your absence in the spaces where they once assumed you would wait forever. The good morning text that doesn't come, the emotional safety net that is suddenly gone. The certainty that you would always understand, always forgive, always remain open, no matter how little was offered in return. And that is when missing you becomes unavoidable. Not because you manipulated them, because you stopped interrupting the consequences of their own emotional pattern. But listen carefully. This part matters. If they come back and you are still starving, you will restart the cycle. If they return with half effort and you treat it like devotion, you will teach them that access to you requires no transformation. If they give you crumbs and you call it depth, your body will pay the price. And it will pay in anxiety, in hypervigilance, in self-abandonment so subtle you may not even notice it until you can no longer recognize your own standards. Do not break your own healing just because they finally felt your absence. The pattern does not break when they miss you. It breaks when you stop translating their desire into your responsibility. You are not here to rescue someone from intimacy. You are not here to perform emotional safety until they finally choose honesty. You are not here to prove that you are worthy of consistency. You are here to remember that your worth is not measured by how deeply an avoidant feels for you in secret. It is measured by what you no longer accept in public. And that is the identity shift. Because the most powerful version of you is not the one who became unforgettable to someone emotionally unavailable. It is the one who became unavailable to what dishonors their peace. The one who can recognize longing without romanticizing dysfunction. The one who can see hidden desire and still ask, is it embodied? Is it mature? Is it safe? Is it enough? The one who no longer confuses being wanted with being chosen. That version of you moves differently. They do not panic in silence. They do not collapse in mixed signals. They do not become addicted to potential. They do not beg emotionally conflicted people to translate what their actions refuse to say. They observe. They feel. They honor what is true. And then they choose themselves with such quiet conviction that anyone incapable of meeting them there begins to feel the loss of that access like a wound. So yes, an avoidant may secretly desire you. They may think about you more than they admit. They may miss you in the middle of the night. They may replay your softness, your strength, your patience, your scent, your voice, the way you made them feel seen without force. They may feel your absence like a pressure in the chest they cannot name. But your power begins the moment you understand that their secret desire is not your destination. Your destination is self-respect. Your destination is emotional sovereignty. Your destination is a life so anchored in your own worth that someone else's inability to love cleanly no longer gets to define your value. And when that finally lands, not just in your mind, but in your body, something extraordinary happens. You stop asking whether they secretly desire you, and start asking whether they deserve access to you at all.